This Shabbat morning, I'm pleased to share the pulpit with our visiting rabbi who is chanting as our chazan, but also has the capacity to give divrei Torot, Rabbi Alex Friedman. Please.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Hodson, for giving me the opportunity to teach this morning. I hope you didn't put away your times because we're going to use them. So this is a rather odd moment for this particular Parsha to happen. If we look at the Maftir, which is the last reading in our Parsha, it's on page 1194 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. We're going to do a little bit of text investigation together because there's a mystery at the heart of this Parsha that I want us to try and solve. The mystery is, why is Moses not allowed to enter the land of Israel? That's the mystery. We're going to try and figure it out. So on page 1194, we're given a reminder of what happened. So God says, go to the heights and you're going to die there. Okay? And on 51, why are you going to die there? A reminder also that your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his kin. So Aaron also dies earlier. It says, for you both of you, you and Aaron, broke faith with me among the Israelite people at the waters of Meribat Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin by failing to uphold my sanctity among the Israelite people. By failing to uphold my sanctity among the Israelite people. Okay, what did Moses do? It's a famous incident. If you want to refresh, you can look on page 884, which is Numbers chapter 20. Famous moment. So Miriam dies, and when Miriam dies, the people are without water. And the rabbis make a lot of interesting midrashim about that we don't have time for today. So the community doesn't have any water. What happens? They say, oh, you Moses and Aaron, we can't stand you. We should have died earlier. Why have you brought the Lord's congregation to the wilderness for us and our beasts to die here? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this? Why did you, make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? There's no water. Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation and they fall on their faces. And God says, now that we listen carefully, what does God say? You and your brother Aaron, take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock, and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. So, what does Moses do? He takes the rod from before Hashem, as God commanded him. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and Moses, said to them, listen, you rebels! Shall we get water for you out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand, smacks the rock twice with the rod, and out comes water. And then God says, this phrase that we just heard a moment ago, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation in the land I've given them. Those are the waters of Meribah, meaning that the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, through which God affirmed God's sanctity. Okay, so what just happened? So Miriam dies, and if you're Aviva Zornberg, you might point out that the word for rebels, if you look at verse 10, is morim, which is Miriam. It's the same word, just different letters, or different vowels. So you might notice there's some Miriam going on here. What else are we noticing? What happened? What did God tell Moses to do? Speak to the rock. What did God say to Moses before that?
Take your rod.
Pick up the stick. Great. And speak to the rock. What does Moses do? He picks up the stick, and he says something to the people. He says some nasty stuff to the people. Listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you from this rock? And then he smacks the rock. Now, this, you might not have known, is also a love story. This section is how I fell in love with Nachmanides. Nachmanides is a biblical commentator. He lived in the Iberian Peninsula around 1300. One of my favorite people to read the Parsha. What I'm about to share with you is Nachmanides' take. Nachmanides says, all right, listen up. Why is it that Moses is kept out of the land of Israel? Is it because he spoke to the rock or he hit the rock rather than speaking to it? Is it because he said nasty stuff to the people of Israel? Is it because he lost his temper and said nasty stuff to the Israelite people? Or is it because something else? So Nachmanides goes through and he says, all right, what did God say for Moses to do? God says, pick up the rod. Now, you might not know this, but that's okay. Every single time that God says to Moses, pick up the rod, that rod is going to hit something. Okay? That rod hits the Nile, turns it to blood. That rod hits the Sea of Reeds, and it splits. That rod hits the ground, and lice comes up out of it, right? This is, as when I taught this to my Sunday school students, this is Moses' magic hit and stick, right? Whenever he picks up this stick, something's getting smacked, right? This is the only moment in the entire Torah, in our whole story of Moses, where God says pick up the rod and then doesn't say to hit anything with it. This is his Moses magic hit and stick, okay? So Nachmanides, which is his other name, his name is Nachmanides. Yeah, we'll go with Nachmanides, or Ramban, which is more complicated. So Nachmanides says, okay, it's a little weird that God said pick up your magic hit and stick and then not to hit anything with it. Let's put that aside for a minute, because we're not so sure about this. Okay, Moses lost his temper. Oh, shit, that one's easy. Moses loses his temper constantly. Moses is always getting angry at the people. So, not so sure that that's what it is. Moses said mean things to the people. Are you kidding? This is one of the nicer mean things that Moses says to the people. No, it cannot be that at all. So Nachmanides goes through this list. He says, well, he's told to pick up the magic hit and stick. He hasn't hit anything with it. That's weird. And even, by the way, if you look on page 418 in Exodus 17, we had a moment like this just a second ago. Right? In the wilderness of Sin, the people Israel, and they're there, and they're in Rephaim, and there's no water. So what do? They yell at Moses. Now we're on page 420. And they say, give us water. And Moses says, why are you talking to me? Talk to God. And the people go, no, we hate you, Moses. Give us water. Why did you bring us from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cries out to God, what am I supposed to do? And God says, pass before the people, take some of the elders, pick up your magic hit and stick, which you struck the Nile, and set out. I will be standing there, meaning God. I will be standing there probably in a pillar of cloud. That's how God usually showed God's self in the wilderness. And what should you do? We're at verse 6. Hit the rock, and water will come out of it. So we already had a story very similar to this one, where God says, pick up your magic hit and stick. I'm going to be there in front of me and all the people. Smack the rock, water. It'll be great. And so they do, and it does, and it is great. So Nachmanides says, this is very odd. We have these two parallel stories. Moses is told almost exactly the same thing, and in this case, something bad happens. He's not allowed to be in the land of Israel. Now, why does this matter? We're going to get to the answer, or Nachmanides' answer, which I think is the answer, but you're allowed to disagree. That's kind of the whole thing. Why does this matter? This matters to me, I think, theologically, because this Parsha that we just read, where Moses is reminded, hey, buddy, you're going to die before you go in the land of Israel, happens right before Yom Kippur. Moses messes up, and God does not forgive him. What a terrifying thing to hear right before Yom Kippur. What an absolutely terrifying thing to hear. Moses messed up, and God did not forgive him. Which is why, for me, what we're about to get to is a more satisfying answer than he hit when he should have spoken. Because he hit when he should have spoken feels like God just zapped him. It feels like he made a teeny tiny mistake. God said, pick up your magic hit and stick. It's like Simon says, right? God says, pick up your magic hit and stick. Now hit the rock. Boom. God didn't say, right? It's too zappy. It's too gotcha. And it feels too odd to be right before Yom Kippur. So what does Nachmanides say? What does he think the answer to this riddle is? Why is Moses not allowed in the land? Let's go back to Numbers 20. So what happens? God says to Moses and Aaron, pick up your magic hit and stick. Go and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water. Moses takes the rod, as God said. Verse 10, Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, Listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you from this rock? Nachmanides says, what keeps Moses out of the land of Israel? We. Shall we get water for you from this rock? What's different in this story than in the other one? In the other story, God is standing in front of all the people. If Moses said we, it's very obvious who Moses means. If Moses says, God shall get water for you, God's right here. In this image, the only we that the people see are Moses and Aaron standing in front of the people. Moses takes credit for a divine miracle. Now that might be bad enough. Moses taking credit for a divine miracle. Oi, don't do that. But it's even worse. Throughout the wilderness narratives, Moses has been fighting against, and slowly losing, a battle with the Israelite people. The Israelites want to see him as a god. That's Chet HaEgel. That's the sin of the golden calf, right? They say, that man Moses who brought us out of Egypt. Actually, it was God who brought them out of Egypt. That man Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. Let's make a golden calf, right? In each of the water stories, the people say, why did you, Moses, bring us out of Egypt? And Moses is like, I didn't do it. Talk to God. And the people are like, no, we're going to talk to you. Right? Throughout the book of Numbers and the book of Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is constantly fighting against the people's instinct to worship him. One of the reasons, by the way, why God buries Moses and we don't know where. Lord knows we would have made a shrine out of it. Right? In this moment, after 40 years of Moses trying to get the people to understand that he is not God, he calls himself God. And that can't be forgiven. That's the mistake that keeps Moses out of the promised land. Can you imagine if Moses, after allowing the people to believe that he's God and saying we when he should have said God, if he's the guy that brings them into the land of Israel? You have idol worship just in the land of Israel. What was the point of God bringing us out of Egypt if we're just going to do idol worship somewhere else? And so Moses is not allowed to enter the land of Israel. Not because God zapped him, because God played Simon Says, but because Moses finally made the fundamental mistake that he never should have made. And it is a mistake that we make constantly. When I was a chaplain at an elder care facility in New York City, I was working with a student who had just gotten her master's in divinity from Union Theological Seminary, which is a Christian seminary across the street from JTS. And I said to her, congratulations on your master's degree. What do you learn with a master's in divinity? And she said, I'll never forget this. She said, I think the main thing you learn is that you are not God. I think the main thing you learn is that you are not God. As we enter into Yom Kippur in just a few days, as we sit in these Aseret Yemei Tshuva, in these 10 days of Tshuva, in this moment in which the world is pregnant with a future, right? Yesterday, Hayom Harat Olam, right? Today is the birthday of the world. Let's not get it twisted. We are able to make internal changes. We are able to change who we are. And we should. But we are not God. Make no mistake. Shabbat Shalom.